last 2 weeks have brought us an in-depth look at some of the details we may never really notice in our race to take B flag, in our efforts to backpack our team to a victory in TDM, or whatever the circumstances may be. In the last 2 weeks, we've been taking a look at the backstories and the history of 2 maps in particular, setting up what you seemingly all would like to be a series here on the channel, and I'm totally on board for that. There's so much hidden away in plain view that we as players may overlook, so if we can examine them and help shape the backstory and intrigue of Black Ops 4 even further, I'm entirely all for that. We recently took a look at the maps Contraband and Hacienda, both which were related to our mysterious drug lord friend, and had one character outside the main family of the crime and drug syndicate who popped up in each, Raul Menendez. While his importance will be revealed more and more as we examine more maps, today's deep dive into the Chinese mountain ranges of the Hunan province will take a step back from him and the others, and instead we open up another entry point, or another pocket of this universe, if you will, as we examine Frequency, an observation compound that reaches far beyond what you may anticipate. Again, I don't normally do this, but I'm genuinely curious to see as to how many people are excited for more of this kind of content. So that said, let's raise our goal from last week because you absolutely smashed it. Let's see if we can hit 2,000 likes on this video. You did it for Contraband, you did it for Hacienda. Let's see if we can do it again. But anyways, let's get into the mysteries of Frequency. When we first load into Frequency, it looks about as industrial as you can get within Black Ops 4. The barrels, the tarps, the caution warnings about pressurization, the giant silos, the satellites, and so on and so forth. But while this has a lot of detail in the map that if you actually take the time to look at it is really cool, there surprisingly really isn't any details in relation to the map's history or backstory in the outer portions of the map. So I guess if you're looking to check this out for yourself, it's kind of a good thing you don't have as much area to work with and to search around with, but the map is home to 2 main surveillance rooms, Building 2 for Cypher data and Building 3 for administration, which are both on opposite sides of the map from each other. Starting on the side of Building 2 for the Cypher data, you can find a bit of the map's present day. It's a room primarily used for monitoring the facility itself, and you have all sorts of security camera footage, you have different schematics and reports, and funnily enough, even a monitor that looks like it was watching a stream of some sorts, as in the bottom corner of what appears to be a garage, you can also see the markings for follower count, subscriber count, and name and donation amounts. Oh, and you can also see why the map looks war-torn and why it's abandoned, because everyone was told to evacuate, presumably because of the destabilization and pressure, or because of the damages sustained by a raid that we'll get to in a few seconds. But it's here also that we learn of the organization that runs the show at this facility, the WSB, or Worldwide Surveillance Bureau. According to the timeline of our history series, this is the first formal introduction that we have to this organization, and it's one that surprisingly has very little known about it across the Black Ops universe, but it does have its purposes. Now, the WSB has their true intentions or in-motion plans detailed in the next building, and that's where you'll see a lot of the relevant information to the map's history. So heading over that way, we can firstly see that there's a surveillance room before you get into the administration portion of this. Just about every single map is accounted for in this surveillance room, from Contraband to Seaside, Slums to Payload, Firing Range to Hacienda, as well as Jungle to Arsenal, and maybe even Morocco. This one tiny room has it nearly all. The WSB keeps tabs on the workings of every single map within this game, and while of course to the casual viewer it's just kind of cool Easter eggs that ties each map together, outside of that, in the universe that's just outside of our matches, every TDM match we play, it's all tethered together by this organization keeping an eye on absolutely everyone and everything. And here's where it gets a little bit crazier. The WSB doesn't just track and keep an eye on the maps and the backstories of each of those, they also keep tabs on every specialist as well. And while not every single one is accounted for in the administration room, moving over, it can be something that is inferred that they are keeping tabs on all of them. But they showcase a handful in this room, and perhaps the ones who know something is up, but they have tabs on Ruin, Seraph, Battery, Firebreak, and Recon. Ruin, Seraph, and Battery are all listed as active in the field when you take a look at one of the side panels, but when we start to look at the correlation with the specialist backstories and missions, it gets a little bit fuzzy because they may be on active duty perhaps, but as for the reasoning they may be looked after is because that particularly Ruin and Battery converse multiple times throughout the cutscenes about something not really adding up and something seeming off.
What's wrong?
That night, something was off.
What night?
That night.
What is it you're not telling me?
Hit play.
Listen to me very carefully. Watch your back. Everything you know is wrong.
Seraph was kind of quiet the whole situation, and the other two of Firebreak and Recon, they have me kind of curious as well, but Firebreak is listed as AWOL, he went off to do his own thing, and Recon is listed as MIA. But here's the really interesting part. The specialists monitored aren't just the specialists that we know about. Sure, they make up 5 of the now 11 specialists within Black Ops 4, so a good representation of tying the characters with the map lore, and again, to the casual viewer, it's kind of cool just to see like, hey, that's the guy I'm playing as. But there's additional glitched out monitor displays that also have the title of High Value Specialist, one of which actually turned out to be our 11th specialist of Zero. Along the one wall, there is a monitor displaying with glitched out details and small snippets of her description saying things like anarchist, system intrusion, Berlin subculture, constantly moving, limited digital footprint, and black hat hacker with a history of large-scale politically motivated pranks. So Zero was teased from the very beginning. And when you look at the other monitors, you can find out not only 1, about a little bit more of the upcoming specialists, but also 2, learn who's still active in the universe behind just multiplayer. So the additional monitors that we have deal with specialists who have description of key points of origin unknown, assassination of high value targets, especially in well-guarded locations, generally considered bulletproof, no global affiliation, and suspect in numerous killings of prominent global political, military, or criminal figures with a single wound made with a surgical blade. And the other specialists detailed as Rosinia, educated in a mission, BDA, OPESP, Zurich, and Zurich Defense Force. Now those two can be cross-referenced with specialist data that we already know of in the Black Ops universe, and given that Black Ops 3 takes place after Black Ops 4, we can pull origin stories and derive that these specialists in questions are in fact Spectre and Outrider. But here's where it also gets a little bit deeper, because while cool, yes, we have some information that Spectre and Outrider may be coming to Black Ops 4, and we actually thought that Outrider would be that specialist coming before Zero. What also gets a little bit deeper in this is that if we go back to Building 2, where we saw the surveillance of the compound and the facility of itself, we also see in that middle console or desk one lone tablet. Now, if you look at that tablet, you interestingly enough have a display of what may be a black market Amazon of sorts, with a subheading that's German for future technology, which I also find it funny that this includes subtext on each item listed on this tablet of get it by Thursday, November 3rd. So literally kind of your Amazon for black market items. But the items listed were basic VR headgear, a VR helmet, and then the interesting pieces of a robot chassis and a robot ballistic head. Now we already know that Reaper's the only robot specialist out there, but we also know that he's not only just in Black Ops 4 already as a blackout character, but he's also in the specialist backstory comic books, more accurately in Prophet's comic, as he and a friend from the services actually go in and break Reaper out of a junkyard that he was repoed or stolen for and reprogrammed to guard. So Reaper is out there as well, and maybe this is a little hint that they're keeping tabs on him, or maybe trying to replicate him. Because at the time of Black Ops 3, we know that he is this sort of prototype killing machine that just goes absolutely berserk, and his backstory is quite gruesome compared to others. So it seems like he's tied in with all this as well. And maybe, just maybe, with the idea that they may be trying to replicate Reaper, if you take a look at the back of the map, there also is a portion that is inaccessible to players, and if you try and glitch through the wall or anything like that, even in theater mode, it simply doesn't exist. But for the lore of a map itself, we end up seeing that there is a lab in the back of Frequency as well, something that deals a little bit further with what this organization may be doing outside of just surveilling the area. But when I look at it, the WSB is seemingly this cabal or clandestine organization that works in the shadows to keep an eye on the known and also unknown of the Black Ops universe. But I want to clearly distinguish the known from the unknown, because the known accounts for things like the maps, the specialists already out there in the field, and other things, but the unknown also checks those mysterious new specialists and potentially the Reaper duplicate off the list, as we know they're not only just keeping an eye on what we see, but also what we don't see and maybe will see in the future. They're potentially the new recruits into this whole operation. And what's interesting to me even further is that this isn't the first time that we see someone or something being recruited. Because if you played through the Specialist HQ missions, you'll probably have picked up on one Dr. Savannah Meyer, or even earlier known as Savannah Mason, who is reaching out and recruiting these specialists that we play as every single day, putting together a team of the best, and as for why, well, we never really find out. It's kind of open-ended and the mystery of the whole storyline. But who's to say that this doesn't tie in with that, scouting the new prospects and getting as much information on those candidates as possible? Perhaps the WSB is that clandestine organization run by our very own Savannah Meyer. Now, an interesting little follow-up to all this information on the WSB and the new player in the field of the backstory of Black Ops 4 is that while the entity of the WSB is brand new, we had a few clues as per last week's deep dive of Hacienda that gave us a little more context to the map that we see. From the post-it note board, we end up seeing that there's an inside man of the crime and drug syndicate's organization that's been leaking information to what is presumably Menendez's crew via this secret location and facility. Someone of that crime and drug syndicate has access to this information on everything in the Black Ops universe and is leaking it to someone else, and that's how Menendez and his crew got the jump on multiple raids of the syndicate's boss hideouts and data facilities. But more recently, the post-it note wall may also describe a raid on the compound and that one of his right-hand men, Vincent, actually died during that raid of the Frequency compound. So while we have warnings of the CO2 and other flammable dangers that could have easily caused the fires and explosions on the satellites and the big hole in the side tubing, it also may come from the Syndicate boss's raid earlier in the storyline. And one final thing that I'll leave you here to wrap up this week's episode is that we see a brief bit of a universe backstory, not just necessarily relating to any map in particular, or at the moment any particular character or organization that we've discussed so far, but there's a few monitors with news feeds on them in which the breaking report from the United News Service details where there were reports of attacks where militants stormed an embassy and took an ambassador hostage in an attempt to destabilize the local government. The story was still developing, but maybe that will come up again sometime soon. I guess we'll see. Regardless, that's where we're gonna wrap it up here at this week's episode of A Secret History of, with the focus on Frequency. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Is there anything that you guys found particularly interesting here out of this week's episode, or are you guys curious to hear more about the WSB? Are you curious to see what really becomes of this surveillance operation, who it really belongs to? Because I'd love to take a look at this further here with you guys, so hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like down below. If you guys are new to the channel and want to stay up to date with all things regarding Black Ops 4, multiplayer, Blackout, zombies, we got you covered with the best of updates, news, information, and of course, secret history like this. We'll keep you up to date with this weekly if you guys want to see more of it. But that said, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. And if you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. I can live on both those. So if you guys want to check out a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But all that said and out of the way, thank you guys all so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.